faithfully sharing value, exploring great books from around the world. Oh, hi, this is Sally with Book Talks. Today we're diving into a classic from the 20th century, All Quiet on the Western Front by the German writer Remarque. Oh, back in July 1914, World War I officially began with the first shot fired. Sadly, for over 4 years, major European nations threw everything into the war, battling fiercely. Nearly 20 million died in combat, and over 20 million more. Tragically, many were injured or left homeless. In battles like the Marne and Somme, hundreds of thousands died in a single week on both sides. Indeed, in human history, this was a disaster like never before. After the war, German writers started describing it. Ernst Junge, who was there, wrote in Storm of Steel that war was like a force of nature. However, another writer, Arnold Zweig, in The Case of Sergeant Grisha, was anti-war but centered on big shots like officers and generals, missing the ordinary folks. Then in 1928, when Remarque published All Quiet on the Western Front in the Vossische Zeitung, folks saw a truly great novel emerge. Remarque, already under 30, he was editing for a big media company with 2 novels and 200-plus articles published. Back then, young Remarque, under 20, joined up after his teacher pushed him. After 6 months of training, he was on the Western Front. Unfortunately, after just over a month, he got injured and ended up in a field hospital to heal. Yet, even though he wasn't in battle long, those experiences stuck with him forever. Powerfully in All Quiet, he shows the war's absurdity with vivid scenes and deeply sympathizes with the young soldiers, just 18 or 19, sent to fight. Heartbreakingly, he said, these youths should have had lives of their own, but were thrown into war and death. Some dodged bullets, but their lives were still ruined by the conflict. Indeed, a critic then said, the book went beyond national gains and moral debates. It was a tribute to the countless fallen. Truly, this novel, a monument to nameless soldiers, stirred up huge reactions. Serializing this work caused Vossische Zeitung's circulation to skyrocket. In early 1929, the novel was published as a standalone book. Within a year and a half, it sold 1 million copies. Today, translated into nearly 60 languages, with total sales over 30 million, it's among the world's most printed literary works and the undisputed top anti-war novel. Gosh, the title All Quiet on the Western Front is deeply ironic. WWN lasted over 4 years, with Germany fighting on both Eastern and Western fronts. During the last 2 years, German military papers habitually reported no new developments on the Western Front in their battle updates. Yet in reality, the Western Front was a bloody slaughterhouse with devastating German casualties. That understated lie, All Quiet, masked millions of soldiers suffering and countless families shattered by grief. The novel divides into 12 chapters, following young soldiers under 20, with 4 main characters from the same school. Classmates and same age, they went to war together. All infantrymen. They enlisted together, trained for 10 weeks together, ate together, and were thrown onto the Western Front together. The narrator facing British and French troops is one such infantryman, Paul Bäumer. He recounts scenes in first person, marching to battle, recovering in field hospitals, visiting comrades, chatting over meals, covering for each other, dodging officers' punishments, battling trench rats, nearly dying shell-shocked under artillery fire. The 12 chapters split into 3 parts. Part 1 shows these soldiers witnessing war's true face immediately after enlistment. Chapter 1 describes Bäumer and 3 buddies enjoying a hearty field lunch and afternoon leisure. Yet they just survived a brutal battle, their 150-man company bombed by British planes, reduced to 80 survivors. But the dead men's rations meant more food and cigarettes for the living. Among the wounded was Kemmerich, Bäumer's hometown friend and classmate, critically injured by shrapnel. After being sent to the field hospital, Bäumer and others visited him. Seeing Kemmerich had a leg amputated high up, When doctors made rounds, they walked past Kemmerich's bed without a glance, treating him like he was already dead. Among Kemmerich's comrades, a guy named Mueller saw Kemmerich was dying and started scheming for himself. But
He'd long coveted Kemmerich's expensive leather boots, so he sidled up to his bedside, chatting him up to get the boots offered before Kemmerich breathed his last.
We can easily see the author's sarcastic tone, which often pops up in the soldiers' conversations. Bäumer said that in school, teachers constantly drilled us on how great the nation was and how glorious it was to fight bravely for the country. So before reporting to the barracks, we all cheerfully went to the barber to shave.
We felt we'd caught a grand era, needing to face the baptism of fire clean and dignified, to forge ourselves into steel-spined national guardians.
Best and dead. But in the training that followed, we not only ditched all our prior learning in literature, philosophy, history, and science, but crammed our heads with salutes, attention, marching, aiming rifles, saluting again, turning right, turning left, and the click of heels.
We also experienced military discipline, how officers would verbally abuse and hassle subordinates.
Their training officer was a sadist. Bäumer and a few comrades could only endure for now and look for chances to retaliate. Bäumer said that as soon as we entered the barracks, we felt disillusioned. Our admiration for the military's might and our sacred vision of war were so fragile, so easily shattered. And when we first truly went to battle, first truly heard the roar of artillery and machine guns, we completely said goodbye to our former selves. We understood everything, how the worldview, patriotism, and heroic devotion to the country that teachers instilled were
all empty words and lies. We understood what death really meant and how terrified we were of it.
At that moment of understanding, we instantly grew old. None of us became traitors or deserters. Instead, we kept loving our country and charged forward in every attack. However, our hearts were filled with loneliness, and we knew we had to remain lonely forever. During lulls in the trenches, they'd reminisce about school, quizzing each other on cultural knowledge, until bursting into laughter, those lofty subjects now utterly useless. They even received letters from their teacher. "You're all steel-forged youth. I'm proud of you." Bäumer and comrades laughed at such phrases, yet their hearts sank with profound sorrow. The laughter came because such hollow words couldn't deceive them anymore, only exposing their absurdity. The sorrow came from knowing their hearts had turned ancient, only capable of tasting life's ironies, never again feeling youth's pure passion. The novel's second part concentrates on soldiers' battlefield experiences and psychological scars. Bäumer recounts one battle he endured. That morning, they faced British bombardment again. On this front, the British usually shelled at 10, but today started an hour early, tons of explosives raining down. However disciplined in training, every soldier now pressed flat against earth by survival instinct, not daring to move. In extreme terror, soldiers developed a painful dependence on the earth. The book states, "Earth means more to no one than to the soldier." When clinging desperately to earth, burying his body and limbs in her embrace under fire, she becomes his only friend, brother, mother. He vents his screams and terror into earth's silent peace, and she absorbs his dread and despair. That same night, they relocated to face a French assault. The author describes French signal flares firing consecutively. Suddenly, the sky filled with green, blue, and red star showers. Each flare drifted down on silk parachutes, lighting everything bright as day. German soldiers saw their shadows sharply etched on the ground. Then, cannons and machine guns roared. Heavy artillery fired between smaller shells like organ music. Stray shells tore through night skies, bellowing like rutting stags into the distance. Meanwhile, searchlights on the ground began scanning the pitch-black night sky. When two crossing beams locked onto a fighter plane, it panicked like a trapped insect, disoriented and frantic. The more poetic these descriptions become, the more brutal the reality of war appears. Now, in the company, some new recruits were paralyzed with fear, trembling, unable to even cry. Then soldiers like Bäumer, who'd been there just 2 months longer, had to play the veteran and calm them. They'd say, "You survived another shelling, you'll get used to it." But soon the bombardment intensified again.
Shrapnel slammed into Bäumer's helmet.
He nearly blacked out, hands clawing frantically at the dirt. He felt the earth itself was tearing apart.
All he wanted was to burrow deeper underground, grabbing anything for cover.
His hands found wood splinters, then a sleeve, an arm. He shouted, but no one answered. They were in a cemetery. Shells had unearthed coffins and corpses. As shelling paused, enemy gas drifted in. They donned gas masks, frozen in graves as poison gas descended like giant jellyfish, settling on them.
After the gas, shells rained again. Coffins catapulted into air. Corpses flung everywhere.
They used coffin planks as shields or splints for broken limbs. He realized with shock. The long-buried dead were dying all over again. Yet each shattered corpse saved one of our lives. 13 were killed or wounded in that barrage. 2 dead already lying in unearthed graves. The rest just shoveled dirt over them where they lay. Retreating soldiers trudged single file, silent, listless, utterly spent. Rain began to fall. Bäumer said the rain soaked our heads, the wounded recruits, comrades' graves, and our very hearts. After such scenes, every soldier abandoned dreams of victory or celebration. Their only goal was to survive in silence. For this, every action became instinctive. When shells flew overhead, they'd instinctively drop flat, and when enemies appeared, attack just as instinctively, cold and ruthless. During close combat with French troops, Bäumer's group cornered a young French soldier who raised his hands, one still clutching a revolver. Bäumer was about to ask whether he meant to shoot or surrender, but a comrade beside him split the man's face with a shovel.
Another French soldier tried to flee but took a bayonet in the back. He staggered off with the blade still embedded. Only those dropping guns to kneel were captured to help carry wounded. All ones!
Another time, Bäumer hid in a shell crater when suddenly a lost French soldier crashed down before him. Without thought, he bayoneted the man, who collapsed instantly. Seeing the dying enemy, guilt washed over Bäumer. He fetched water for him and dressed wounds with his own supplies. He thought he might be captured by French forces someday. If this Frenchman lived, perhaps he'd speak kindly for him then. But hours later, the French soldier died. Bäumer searched his belongings. He discovered the soldier was a print shop typesetter with a loving family, a wife and daughter. Bäumer vowed silently, "I'll write to your wife," explaining what happened. "When I earn money, I'll send it to them." As atonement? This encounter shook Bäumer to his core. Next day, he confessed to comrades Kat and Albert, who comforted him. "Don't dwell on it. If we feel too deeply, none of us will survive this war." Slowly, Bäumer's anguish eased. He stopped harsh self-blame and found emotional equilibrium. Under survival's crushing weight, Bäumer's soul was repeatedly tempered. No soldier was purely a cold killer. Each still had flashes of raw humanity. Some soldiers feel overwhelming sorrow when remembering their peaceful youth they can never return to.
Others, upon receiving cigarettes, suddenly stand up, throw them down, and stomp furiously while cursing non-stop.
A soldier named Detyring grew numb to others' deaths and injuries. But back home in the countryside, he raised livestock and had special affection for horses. So when seeing war horses wounded by shells, intestines dragging, screaming in agony, he raged. What crime did these poor horses commit? Using animals in war is the vilest act. Yet the novel's most touching emotion is undoubtedly the brotherhood among company soldiers. Amidst life's complete unpredictability, they still found moments of shared joy. Playing cards, smoking, mocking their lying schools and teachers, standing against abusive officers together. After bloody battles, they'd brave corpse stench to collect French flares, silk parachutes. Some sent home for clothing, others kept as handkerchiefs. Among Bäumer's comrades, Kat commanded most respect, a hardy, capable veteran. When the company moved to unfamiliar territory, Kat procured meat for the men. Once, returning from headquarters, Kat and Bäumer used shelling as cover to steal a goose from an HQ shed. While roasting it, exhausted Bäumer collapsed to sleep. Waking, he found Kat's silhouette over him. In that moment, his loneliness eased so profoundly, tears welled. Cat smiled. Goosey is ready. They ate, each offering the best pieces to the other. They took the remaining half to two other comrades. One, Tiaden, after eating, lifted the pot, slipping broth. I'll never forget you guys. Compared to Hardy Cut, Bäumer was more sensitive and emotional. He might weep in sleep, dreaming of a flower, or gaze at butterflies fluttering into the trench at dawn. Earlier, when Kemmerich was dying in the field hospital, Müller wanted his boots. But Bäumer stayed by Kemmerich's side, watching him, pale lips, exposed teeth, muscles wasting, cheekbones protruding, forehead bulging, and sunken eyes. Though knowing his comrade wouldn't last, he kept comforting. Don't worry. Prosthetics are advanced now. Wounds far worse than yours have healed. They might send you to Klosterberg Sanatorium, among villas where you can gaze out windows. It's harvest season. Fields bathed in evening sun look like mother of pearl. As he spoke, he saw Kemmerich crying, knowing his life was slipping away. Time running out. Suddenly Kemmerich groaned, making gurgling sounds. Bäumer called the doctor, who ignored him, then an orderly. The orderly calmly said, 16 dead since morning, counting yours, 20 today. 20 people.
Bäumer shook with rage but stayed until his comrade's last breath.
Afterwards, when it rained, Bäumer imagined flowers on Kemmerich's grave, but even closest comrades fade away. By the novel's third part, after brutal fights, only 32 remained in Bäumer's company. Many fallen had families, and Bäumer's longing for home grew stronger daily. Just then, he got leave. Under envious gazes, he journeyed home to parents and sister. Rifle slung, pack on back, he boarded a train, watching trees recede along tracks, stations left behind. Arriving, he walked hometown streets, recalling long-forgotten things. The river still shimmered with algae, laundresses steam billowing from windows. The pastry shop she liked still stood. The pharmacy grocery remained. Finally, he opened a door, a brown one, with a broken handle, and a cool gust blurred his vision. The story climaxes here. This is his home. His eldest sister greeted him. Dizzy, he couldn't utter a word. His mother lay sick in bed. Visiting her, few words passed. She whispered, "My dear child," then asked, "Is the front terrible?" Others told him hometown life was strained to support the war front. People questioned him about battles. His father asked if he'd bayoneted enemies. Bäumer turned away. He refused to describe gore. Only to his mother did he say emotionally, "No, Mom, it's not bad. I've made good brothers." He visited Kemmerich's mother. The distraught woman shook him, sobbing. "Why are you alive when he's dead? Did you see him die?"
How did he die? Do you know?
Bäumer learned his former teacher, who'd ranted about joining a great war, was now drafted himself. Back home, he entered his quiet room and sat on the familiar sofa. Gazing at books bought with tutoring money, he pleaded, "Accept me, shelter me, bring my past life back." He imagined surviving the war, returning to this room, sitting there as if unchanged, yet Bäumer's wish remained unfulfilled. The final chapter reveals, by autumn 1918, only he survived from his class. All discussed peace, awaited armistice. None dared imagine continued war.
Yet he never saw the armistice, killed in action that October.
That day, Army Command reported as usual, all quiet on the Western Front. Thus ends the novel's core narrative. Remarque narrates from a German soldier's perspective, sharing his war experiences and true feelings. War brought him none of the heroism he'd imagined. Instead, it destroyed everything, turning him from a vibrant youth into a disillusioned cynic. From someone who faced life positively, he became one constantly fearing death. He killed enemies to survive, yet couldn't escape his fate of dying in battle. As comrades left one by one, he could only follow to the next world to rekindle their brotherhood. Remarque describes battlefields under artillery fire, craters littered with limbs and wreckage. He depicts poison gas, human entrails splattered on trees, brains bursting out. He shows how blood flows in the trenches.
The groans of wounded in field hospitals, injured war horses galloping wildly.
Facing such scenes, we can't help but despise war and ache for those caught in it. But Remarque himself said his writing was mild. Real battlefields were far harsher. WWN came quite suddenly. Before it erupted, Europe had seen no major wars for over 30 years. Europeans rejoiced, believing peace and prosperity would last. Yet from summer 1914, that dream shattered completely. Major powers, Germany, Austria, Hungary, Britain, France, Russia, pushed their brightest youth to the front, sacrificing their lives. In Remarque's view, this generation's suffering cannot be erased. But post-war, a decade later, right-wing militarists rose in Germany, exploiting resentment over defeat, clamoring for revenge while downplaying soldiers' nightmares. So, Remarque noticed this early on. In a letter to a friend, he said he wrote All Quiet in just months, fueled by indignation. He saw even more veterans today praising German soldiers' bravery. They altered war memories, forgot the horror, and only glorified German heroics. In 1934, the film adaptation of All Quiet on the Western Front premiered in Berlin, but was banned by Nazis by year's end. A warlike atmosphere already permeated Germany. In January 1931, Remarque declared, "The dead left no will, demanding vengeance only a plea. Never again." Soon, no right-wing threats forced him to flee Germany for France, later settling in Switzerland. 2 years later, January 1933, Hitler's Nazis seized power, expanding German hegemony while persecuting anti-war figures like Remarque. His books were burned publicly. Even in Switzerland, he narrowly escaped assassination. In 1938, Nazi Germany revoked his citizenship. March 1939, after fleeing to America, Remarque became a U.S. citizen. September 1939, World War II erupted. All Quiet couldn't halt war's wheel from turning again. Yet Remarque's foresight and the novel's artistic merit gained greater recognition. In 1945, his Arch of Triumph about European exiles sparked another reading frenzy. 1967, West Germany awarded him the Grand Cross for his contributions to humanity. Ironically, after Germany banned it, the film won 5 Oscar nominations, first war movie to win Best Picture. Its compassion for enemy soldiers proved universal brotherhood. War is hell for all. A century later, his words still make us feel that generation's fate. Cruel wars shaped people, just as our peaceful environments shape us today. In non-war times, we must preserve Remarque's sensitivity, filling memories with truth, rejecting willful forgetting or forced distortion. This clarity is our wealth, guiding us through new uncertainties with discernment. All right, that wraps up our discussion of Remarque's novel, All Quiet on the Western Front. You'll find reading notes below the audio. See you next time.